Hello everyone, welcome from me and from the rest of our EduPal at Euro team. We are very happy that there is so much interest in innovative palliative care education. Before each of the partners give you in-depth information about the different approaches, I will give an overview of the project as a whole. We started with defining the core competences we expect from bachelor degree nurses by the time they graduate. After that, our imagination and our creativity could start to flow. The Romanian colleagues wrote case vignettes about the different core competences, and those case vignettes formed the basis of 10 different stories. They were written by the EAPC. As you will probably know, storytelling is a very strong immersive method and teaching. From the story, it is possible to derive innovative approaches. The entire team worked together on every teaching approach, but each had the lead in their own team. Minna from Finland focuses on the core competences and escape game. Simulation will be explained by Danny from Belgium, and Nicoletta from Romania talks to us about ethical and clinical reasoning. What can you expect from us when the project ends in about a year? For the core competences, we will have a list and a paper ready. For the simulation, we will provide an e-course about the method of simulation and how to create it for your own students. There will also be some examples for inspiration. The same is the case for the escape game and for the clinical and ethical reasoning. We will not only provide the methods and the worksheets in 5 languages, that's English, Finnish, Dutch, Romanian, and German. We will also offer a golden standard about the clinical reasoning in 2 stories. With the project, we wanted to demonstrate that combining these teaching methods is a very strong approach to convey palliative care competences to nursing students. To illustrate that we use the same golden standard case of Maggie and Ben as a leading story through each teaching tool. Maggie and Ben are an elderly couple with 3 adult children. The story tells us about their social network, backgrounds, religion, the dementia of Maggie, and how Ben and the children cope. This story is worked out as a golden standard in clinical reasoning, but also forms the basis for an escape game, a moral deliberation, and different simulations. So everything is put together by the story. You can take the things differently or put them together. Now I'll give the floor to Minna Hökkä to give information about the core competences.
So hello everybody, and it's very nice to see that there are so many people from different parts of the world listening to us. I'm Minna Hökkä and I'm from Finland. I'm working in the Kajaani University of Applied Sciences as a head of school. So I'm a PhD in nursing sciences. And also one part of my work is to work in the development of palliative care in Finland in a project funded by the health ministry in the northern part of our university hospital. So we can go to the next slide. So I think most of you, this is a very familiar thing, but still, why are we speaking about palliative care? And why are we speaking about the importance of education? So all of us knows that the need of palliative care is immense. The population is aging and the incidence of non-communicable diseases, it's growing the whole time. And also COVID-19 has shown that we need palliative care. And more than 20 million people worldwide are estimated to require palliative care. So the need is increasing. And that means that we also need nurses with good skills and good competencies in palliative care, and also in many, many different contexts. because when you are working as a nurse, it's very, very difficult to avoid to meet a person with an incurable disease when you are working. And then we can go to the next slide. And why is education important? The World Health Organization has said that one of the most usual barrier in the palliative care access is a lack of training and awareness of palliative care. If we don't know what palliative care is and how it should be provided, it's quite difficult to provide it. And also, insufficient palliative care education has been identified as a major barrier to the development of palliative care. So it's quite a big issue when we are speaking about why we are speaking about palliative care education. It's one of the key concepts to develop quality palliative care. And then we can go to the next slide. And what was our part in this project? As Verle already told us, we had the core competencies, but we had to get to the core competencies in some way. So we made a process to achieve this goal. So we had nominal groups in different countries, and we made a scoping review. And then we put all of the data together and developed our core competencies. And I will tell you some words about how we have done it. So Joanna, next slide. Thank you. The nominal group research, what we did it in 4 different countries with quite similar multidisciplinary groups. As you see here, we had 36 participants in our nominal groups. And we can go to the next slide. The results of the nominal groups was that we got 4 top 10 lists, but there were doubts of the lists from the participants after the nominal group in different countries, and that made us to decide that we also made an analysis of all the 353 competencies which was produced in the nominal group when we had the nominal group sessions. And at first we took all the contents which appeared in all countries. They were collected and reduced. And after that, these reduced competencies was analyzed with the content analysis approach. And the next slide, thank you. Then we also made a scoping review. The aim of it was to describe the core competencies of palliative care common from the European undergraduate bachelor degree nursing education. We found in total 567 studies, of which 7 articles were included. Also, we made a hand search in 20 published curriculums, and 3 of these published curriculums was included. The other curriculums were not clear that they were bachelor degree nursing education programs and undergraduate education programs, which was our target. And the next, thank you. And we made the mapping because we are not beginning from point 0. We already have a report made by EAPC and recommendation of nursing education. So we made a mapping how it seems to be compared to the EAPC competencies, these different competence frameworks, and we found a lot of similarities. And the next slide, please. But also we found contents which was not found in the EAPC competence framework. And that was why we made a synthesis of the data which was found in the articles when we compared to the EAPC competencies And we found new competence themes and new analytical themes about these data. Thank you. The next, please. And to get to the core competencies, we made a synthesis of all of the data. So we have 12 core competencies. So you see the core competencies in the left, and in the right, you see the sub-themes which were merged from the data. And we have put in red the one which came from the review, and with black the one which will come from the NGT. So we merged all of the data together to get the competencies. And thank you. The next slide. So what are we going to do, and how are the competencies used in this project? We made this process to develop the 12 core competencies. And the case vignettes based on focus groups of professionals was made, and we made also a mapping from there that all or partly of the core competencies were included in the vignettes. And after that, we have done these different kind of approaches to education, and we will hear about these now today. We are in CAMC, we are doing the escape room game to palliative care. And it means that we are using gamification in undergraduate nursing education. We are not going to talk about this more in this webinar, but in some other situation, I'm quite sure that you will hear more about the escape game. And if I remember right, I don't have anything else. I will get the floor to Danny. So can you, yes, I was quite sure. So my dear colleague, Danny, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mina. Can I hope you see my presentation. So my name is Dani Verreke, and I am the project coordinator of the NursEduPal Euro project, but I'm also a researcher at the HOES team in Belgium. So I'm going to be telling you about the two IOs, so intellectual outputs, where the HOES team has the lead. So imagine that every nurse or every first-year nursing student, before they have the very first practice experience, we can train them in palliative care. So when they meet palliative patients in their first internship, they already know what to do, or at least they feel strong enough to deal with these patients. How to accomplish that? We believe within our consortium of collaborators that this can be done by introducing very early on in the curriculum simulation education. And research actually has shown that up to half of traditional clinical hours can be substituted by high quality simulation experiences without affecting the end of program educational outcomes. That means that simulations are a validated alternative for bedside training. So within our project, we have two intellectual outputs that are dealing with simulation. And in intellectual output 2, we introduce simulations as enabling experiential learning opportunities. We base the cases on the golden standard of Maggie and Ben that Virle introduced in the beginning. And we aim that the fully developed simulation cases that we are going to provide to you, to the community, that they are aimed at training a particular set of the intellectual output 1 core competences that Mina just talked about. So we are going to provide 4 fully developed simulation cases. One is directed to the well-being of an informal caregiver. One is dealing with advanced care planning. One, how to use properly a syringe driver, and one on the dying phase. Now, besides providing you with this tool, we would also like to ask to the community to contribute to build an elaborate source of material that can be shared by everyone. So we are going to launch a database in which the products that we are developing within the project are going to be present. So this database will collect cases, and preferentially cases for which different tools are developed. So a simulation exercise or an escape game or whatever tool that you like. And we hope that by sharing this database, by putting in our materials, people from all over the world will be willing to share their information as well. And that would be a beautiful resource for everybody to use. So when you want to use simulation as an educational tool, there are several steps that you need to take into account. Simulation, like from the conception of the whole thing until the end of a true simulation exercise with your students, goes in 7 steps. And all of these steps, if you want to make a good simulation, they are equally important. So it all starts with the conceptual phase. And that's actually the phase that takes the most of the work for you as a teacher. So it all starts from a real life case. And from that case, you build a simulation exercise from that. You will select particular aspects from the case that you want your students to be confronted with during the simulation. And you will determine a lot of things like the learning goals, what are the learning outcomes. You will write a scenario. You need to consider different ways the scenario can go. You need to think of materials and props that you need to make the simulation as real as possible. You will need probably some paperwork and informed consent or other stuff. You need to contact simulation patients if you're going to work with real actors or colleagues that can take up a role in the simulation. So it's not just about writing the scenario and thinking about the educational part of simulations. It's the whole thing and all the logistics to do the simulation with your students. And so first of all, you will need to get prepared. You will need to make sure that on the day of the simulation, everything is ready for the whole thing to run smoothly. So you will need to prepare the room where you're going to do the simulation. You will have to have a room to put your observers, that are the students that are not participating in the simulation. You need to get your simulation patients ready for their roles. So maybe you will need to put on some makeup or whatever to, again, make the reality of the experience as high as possible. And when you're prepared, you can start with the real simulation. So first of all, you will brief your everybody involved in the simulation. So that is the students that participate in the simulation, the students that will be observers, the facilitators, the logistics staff, everybody involved needs to be well prepared, needs to be told what is expected from them. But at the same time, you will also explain to your students what is the aim of the simulation and what are the expected learning outcomes, so they know why they are doing this for. You will stress, and this is very important, that they are in a very safe environment and that mistakes are okay. You know, they can make mistakes. They will not be graded for it. You know, you don't grade simulation exercises. The whole idea is that you create this environment where students can try things out without putting patients at harm. So although there is no grading, afterwards, when the simulation is done, there will be a discussion with the whole group to talk about how the whole simulation went and how the interventions went. So you will then do the actual simulations with your students. And then after the simulation is done, you will do a debriefing. And the debriefing is a very important step in simulation exercises, because that is the moment where the true learning is happening. Not during the simulation, but afterwards, reflecting on what you have done. And there are very many different methods for structured debriefings. And if you want to be a good facilitator, if you want to be a good debriefer, you should get a little bit of training in it. Now, debriefing consists of 3 to 5 phases, depending on the model. And essential phases are the reaction phase, the analysis phase, and the summary phase. And during the reaction phase, the participants have to share their initial reactions and experiences that they had during the simulation. And then comes the analysis phase. And in that phase, interventions are explored. So everything that happened during the simulation, and these interventions are explained. Why did the participant do this or that, right? And in that way, performance gaps are identified, and possible solutions together with the whole group are put forward to close these gaps, to close these performance gaps. So during this analysis phase, this is the phase where the students learn the most. And then the summary phase, in the summary phase, the effectivity of the analysis phase is assured, because then the learners need to recall all the solutions that were presented for all the identified performance gaps. And then to end the simulation day, you have a reflection and an evaluation phase. So you will go over all the practical aspects of the simulation day. You will revise the course of the entire simulation itself and evaluate what went well and what went wrong. So that based on these things, you can make improvements or adjustments if necessary. And you can do this reflecting and evaluation phase just with your team, but you can also do it together with your students. So I hope that by now you understood that making a simulation is not something you do in a whim. So to support the teachers that want to implement simulation education in their classes, we've made an e-learning to get you started. So Intellectual Output 3 is an e-learning program that consists of 6 modules, well, actually of 7 modules. And it is made in a program, Articulate Rise, and it will be provided in 5 languages. So Articulate Rise allows you to share links, and then with that link, you can go through all the modules completely. So this is the way how we are going to share the e-learning with the community. And so now I will kind of browse with you through the modules so that you know what they are all about. But first of all, let's see how the modules are structured. So all of them have the same format. So there is always a section 0 in each module, and this contains the general information. It all starts always with a module statement. So that's a quote or a nice sentence from a paper or whatever that really incorporates everything that this module is about. And then there's an overview of the content, the objectives, the learning objectives of the module, and the time we think you will need to go through the entire module. And then we have the sections, depending on the module, it's 1 up to 6 or 7 sections. And these sections, they have the content. Yes. So they deal with a topic. And for each section that we have, we every time tell you which are the sources that we used to make the content of that section. And then at the end of the last section, we will provide links to the other modules. So it's easy for you if you want to just proceed through every module. All right, so let's take a look at the introductory module 0. So in that module, we just explain a little bit how the project, what the project is about. So the NursEduPal Euro project, what it is about, how we are financed by the Erasmus Plus program. We explain which sources that we use and the way we are referring to those sources. We explain the structure of the module and the goal and why did we make this thing, the overall learning objectives, and then again we call out to the community to share your simulation exercises. In module 1, and maybe I'll just go back quickly to the overview. Let's see if I can do this the other way around. I'm sorry about that. Okay, just the colors. So module 1 and 2 are provide theoretical background on simulation education and on debriefing. Module 3 and 4 put that information into practice. In module 4, we give you a simulation template for you to start with. And in module 6, we have a kind of testimonies for people that have been using simulations already. All right, so module 1 is one of those theoretical modules. And in that we provide the basis and we just touch on things, you know, it's not an entire syllabus or anything. The thing is that we want to convince you how wonderful simulations are to teach palliative care, and not as much to go into the details of the theory about simulations. But anyway, we give you a little bit of tasting with the theoretical frameworks on which it's based and why we think it is really a suitable tool for teaching palliative care competencies. And then we describe that you can have very complicated simulations with high technology mannequins that do all kinds of things you want them to do, but they might be as easy as 2 people in a room talking to each other. Yeah, so you can have very high technology or very low technology, and all of them actually work. And then we explain the sim zones. So there are different, in simulations, you can have different complexities of simulation. We explain a little bit how these sim zones work. But for undergraduate, for bachelor degree nursing students, we stick to sim zones 0, 1, and 2. And you can learn all about that if you go through the module. And then in the last section of module 1, we give an overview, the one that I just gave you in the beginning of the talk with the circle and the different balls. What are the different steps of a simulation exercise? So this is module 1. The second module is the second theoretical module, and this tells you everything about debriefing. We thought it was important to spend a little bit more time to debriefing, also the theoretical framework of it, because it is so important for the learning process in simulation. So therefore, an entire module on the why, what, and how of debriefing. So we provide some theoretical background, but we also give you hands-on tools that will help you to guide a debriefing session. So that's module 2. And in module 3, and I'm just going to look at my note here, we briefly touch on the theoretical frameworks that can help you to make high quality simulation exercises. So we talk about the 5WH1 method to help you ask the right questions at the time when you start the conceptual phase. Yeah. So these things help you to get your brain in the right situation to make a very good simulation exercise. And then we discussed the 4CID model as a method to develop instruction materials to support complex learning. So we give a little background here on how instruction materials have to be developed, and then we implement these tools to simulations. And then in module 4, we thought it would be handy if we would provide a template with the different things you need to think about during the conceptual phase. So there's a lot of stuff you need to think about. So we kind of listed that and gave a little bit of information on what we mean with that thing, with those things, and what you can choose from. And we provide also guidelines to help you use the template. So that's module 4. And as we were working on the e-learning, we were just discussing, and we said, you know, we cannot make an e-learning about simulations and not really show a simulation. You know, people won't know. If people don't know simulations, they don't know what it's all about. So we thought we needed to show you every single step in the making of a simulation exercise. So we organized a simulation day with our third-year nursing students. We filmed the entire procedure. Of course, we got their consent that we could use the materials. And we assembled that in short videos that explain each one of the 7 phases of making and executing a simulation. And all of these little video fragments are combined into module 5. We also thought it would be informative to share the experience of people that have used simulations in their education programs. And this is what we did in the final module of the e-learning, module 6. So as we are an international consortium, we wanted you to be able to hear the voices of the different countries involved in our project. So we have Belgian, Finnish, or we will have, we're still in the process of collecting this information. We have Belgian, Finnish, Romanian, and Austrian inspiring experiences with simulation as an educational tool in palliative care. And we have the vision, or we have quotes or little videos from students, from simulation patients, from teachers, but also for curriculum or program coordinators that report in those short video messages on how they feel simulations are valuable. And we thought it would be fun to have for each country the messages in the national language, but for everybody to understand everything, we do provide English subtitles for everything. So what are we aiming for with this e-learning? We want you to see it as a starting point. It's definitely not something that's like fully done and then you're all ready, but we do hope it's a starting point. You will get excited to work with simulations and you will have at least the basis information to get going. We try to be as helpful as possible and provide guides and templates and hands-on things to help you make a simulation exercise. And then when you're all done with the e-learning, we hope that you will be able to describe the key theory underpinning simulation in education, and to be able to say what are key steps involved in designing a very good instruction material. We hope that you will understand the method and the importance of debriefing, and that you will be able to explain and describe the different steps, so the 7 steps in the simulation exercise. We also hope, and we especially hope, that you will be able to create your own simulation exercises, and that you will be able to determine if and how simulation education could be beneficial for the curriculum you're teaching in. And as I said, we hope you will be willing to share your own simulation exercises so we can build this resource. And so with this, I am at the end of my section on simulation as an enabling experiential learning opportunity. I will gladly now pass the word on to Nicoletta Mitrea from Transylvania University of Brasov, and she will tell you more about the project focus on clinical and ethical reasoning.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Nicoletta Mitrea. I'm a nurse at Hospice Casa Speranței in Brașov, Romania, and also a senior lecturer at the University of Transylvania, also from Brașov, Romania. Happy to be here. I could see at participants list that there are quite a lot of Romanians participating, and also nurses from the countries in Central, Eastern, Southeastern European parts. So good to have you guys here. I will share my screen, and I will start by telling you a little bit about, I hope you can see now the full screen. Yes, okay. Before starting introducing in more depth the IO6, which was a collaborative intellectual output shared between Hospice Casa Speranței and the University of Transylvania, but also with the help of the partners in the project. I would like to give you a little bit of overview in regard to the two intellectual outputs that were in our responsibility to develop. One is the one that will be presented today in this webinar with its materials and its results, and also another intellectual output which is currently, let's say, under construction. It is the European matrix, the framework that will include core competencies, different teaching methods, and the different way in which we incorporated the different teaching methods in the curriculum in order for the competencies to be built at this level of education that we are talking about, which is bachelor degree nursing education. So just to make sure that this is a clear message that we are sending, and this intellectual output, as I said, the European matrix on the competencies of nurses, of bachelor degree nurses, will be probably presented in a future webinar. I will start telling you about the clinical reasoning and ethical deliberation intellectual output with some theoretical input first, in order for all of us to deeply understand the value of nurses and the work that nurses are bringing into the process of care. I'm coming from the part of the world in which the work of nurses, particularly the nurses into the multidisciplinary palliative care services and teams, are not, let's say, fully accepted, fully incorporated, fully appreciated at the important value that this work of ours is bringing into the plan of care. And because there are so many of you coming from the part of work that I'm working in as a nurse, I was feeling this eagerness of let's go back at the theory and remind ourselves what it is all about when we discuss about clinical reasoning and ethical deliberation. And I picked some of the fragments from the literature review that was done in regard to clinical reasoning in this intellectual output, and it's about knowing and doing. And I underline this in blue, as it is important to associate what we know in the field of health that we are caring patients for, and it's also about doing. And in my mind, these two correlate with it's science, but it's also art. It's about putting our experience out there, our self-awareness out there, and together with the knowledge, the scientific knowledge that we gather in time, just to put it into the day-to-day practice. Then it's about determining diagnosis and prognosis, making a therapeutic decision, as together with the other members of the palliative care team, the nurses should be competent enough to come into the plan of care with a defined nursing diagnosis, with a predicted prognosis, and to really come with the interventions that are specific for nurses and that are also in collaborative actions with the other members of the palliative care team. Also, it is a process associated with the work of nurses, as frequently, particularly in the clinical side, we will see that sometimes clinical reasoning and ethical deliberation, it is, let's say, given to the physicians or to the physicians and psychologists maybe, but not all the time, not all over the world. It is also a part of the day-to-day practice of nurses, of the work of nurses. And it's also about providing safe and quality palliative care, that it involves having this technical expertise, so having some skills based on our knowledge, having built in time the ability to critically think, put it together with our experience, but I will detail more in the future slides about when to incorporate the experience and the clinical judgment associated to this. As a definition, there are many definitions of clinical reasoning, but I wanted to emphasize now the fact that it's a complex cognitive process, so it's a process of our mind. All of us, 100% of the population, we are all thinking. Many more, how to say, minute by minute, moment by moment, we are constantly thinking. Now, it is a question mark if we are aware of what we are thinking of, or if we choose not to be aware of what we are thinking of. Of course, there is a big portion of our thoughts that come under the, how to say, under the influence of what it is happening around us, under the influence of how we are feeling at one moment in time, but we can only say that we are critically thinking, that we are, how to say, synced in the process of clinical reasoning. It's when we are aware of the fact that we have those thoughts in regard to the situation of a patient and what is the plan of care for that patient. And this cognitive process, it can be formal or informal, and I underline formal because in order to have this process, a formal one, you need to educate yourself in order to use the different bits that are involved in the process of clinical reasoning, and also the informal part of the different thinking strategies, which are developed and comes together with the experience that you have built it on in time. And at the end of the day, when we put all these processes together, we weigh on the different alternatives, the different actions that need to be taken in the plan of care of a patient. And as mentioned in the beginning of my talk, that we are discussing about bachelor degree nursing education, we need to build this complex cognitive process from the time when we have the nursing students in the early years of their formation, as it is scientifically proving that no matter where a nurse will perform as a nurse, at least at one moment in time, they will encounter an end of life clinical situation, and they will all need to have already built it up during their early years of formation, these palliative nursing competencies. So the clinical reasoning process needs to be started at this moment in time in regard to becoming a nurse. What are the tools that we use when we think about the clinical reasoning and clinical thinking? It's reflection, induction, deduction, analysis, and we need to be putting together these inductive and deductive cognitive skills. There are different frameworks in the literature that talk about how we put this together in the clinical process. And when it is about the competencies in clinical reasoning and ethical reasoning, we need to look at knowledge, we need to look at abilities, we need to look at skills in order to really say that we have developed this capacity of critically thinking as a competence, as an ability. I said I will detail a little bit more in regard to where it comes the expertise, the experience that each one of us in time gain in the field of practice that we are performing. And definitely it is important all these years that we have performed as nurses, and we don't need to neglect the years of experience. Myself, I have more than 20 years of experience in a specialized palliative care service, and still I need to pay very much attention on what is the thought that is leading me in the process of care of a patient. It's only knowledge, science, or do I add also the gut feeling, the emotion, the intuition, the perception of the situation that I care for that patient, which I call it some slides before, the art of caring for patients. So as I said, we need to incorporate experience in the process of care, but we need to pay attention not to base the clinical reasoning, the critical thinking only on the experience. We always need to improve our knowledge. We always need to add what is new in the evidence-based clinical practice, the new, everything that is new out there, in order to really have our nursing practice based on science. And we need to teach this process from these early years of the development as the nurses in the profession that we choose for our career. So otherwise we will end, if we do not start these early years, we end up with having already in the field nurses that are not accustomed with looking at what is new in the evidence-based scientific clinical practice, but only based in time their performance on the experience, on the expertise that they have gained in time. So we need to build this during these early years. And how do we do this? We always wonder. Yes, I wonder myself, I inquire myself, I have my own insight, but then I have the knowledge. And I ask myself, is this a similar case? Is this a similar situation? Is there something new that in the field that I need to incorporate in the clinical practice that I offer to the patient? So as we inquire ourselves, as we question ourselves, we always need to wonder, but we always need to build on that complex cognitive process of the clinical thinking and the critical ability that we gain in time. So those are different frameworks that I added to the presentation, and it is important at the end of the day to go, or when it is about clinical reasoning, to go through this cycle. It has several steps, but we need to pay attention, and at each patient at the time to incorporate this cycle into the plan of care. First will be to consider the patient situation. The second phase will be to review the current information, to gather new information, to recall in our own mind the knowledge, to look for new knowledge that is out there. Then the next step will be to analyze the information and to interpret this information, to distinguish relevant from irrelevant information, to discover new relationships or new patterns into the different chunks of information that we gather together to make deductions, to match current situations with situations in the previous situations of caring for patients, and to predict potential outcome. We need to be able to identify and synthesize nursing diagnosis or patients' problems. We need to establish goals. We need to select the actions that we will implement, and we definitely need to have a point in time when we evaluate the outcomes that we have established initially. And it's important to always remember that we need to reflect at what we have done in the different processes of care, and we need to reflect back to what was good, what was not so good, what needs to be improved, in what area, and how do we continuously incorporate the new knowledge that is out there into our internal thinking, and this process of reasoning that each one of us has it. It's just a matter of time and self-awareness and self-education and continuous education as a group, as nurses, as professionals, to move forward. And I keep underlining the need for having these processes taught and learned from these early years of the development as nurses by these bachelor degree nurses that we are focused on now. The materials that have been developed under the umbrella of the intellectual output, clinical reasoning, and ethical deliberation were initially 20 case vignettes that have been resulted out of several focus groups that we have run here in Romania. In these focus groups, there have been involved together nursing students, together with nurses in specialized palliative care services. So in order to develop this, the most important situation that can arise from the clinical practice on one side, and that the students consider to be the most relevant for their formations in the nursing profession. Out of these 20 case, initial 20 case vignettes, there have been chosen 10 scenarios that have been developed afterwards by EAPC in clinical situations. Then a clinical reasoning booklet for students that have been developed together with Ho West University, together also with the evaluation framework of the students into this part of clinical reasoning. And there are 2 golden standard cases already completed in order for the future educators, for the future trainers to have at their disposal. In regard to the ethical deliberation, there have been taking out those 10 case vignettes out of the initial 20 ones. There has been developed a detailed booklet for educators in order for them to know how to use the moral case deliberation technique as the tool to present the case vignettes to the students, and how to guide, that will teach educators how to guide the students into the depth of the moral case deliberation technique. There is also a PowerPoint presentation that is recommended for the teacher for the educators to present it to the students in order to familiarize them on the technique that they will be immersed in. There is also an observational guide and an evaluation form as a feedback from students in regard to the method used in order to go deep into the ethical dilemmas that are presented into the 10 case vignettes. As conclusions, it's difficult to say that at one moment in time in our development as nurses, we have achieved the maximum potential in regard to clinical reasoning. This is a lifelong process, and we need to be accountable for and to be responsible of from the beginning. So since we've decided to become nurses, more importantly, clinical reasoning, ethical deliberation, which is important. All those two aspects are important in all fields of care, but in palliative care, it's even more, how to say, highlighted. It's more needed as we deal with end-of-life situations and withholding, withdrawing treatment, so difficult decisions to make. So we need continuously to educate ourselves in this regard. And in order for us to really build in time this professional layer, we need to start with ourselves. We need to become aware of ourselves, of our own thinking, and how to educate ourselves on how these cognitive processes are moving on in our head. I would like to recommend a book at this point in the presentation. I hope the participants can see this book. As I mentioned, we need to start with ourselves and then have the how to say, the expectation that we will be better in the profession. And the book is called Atomic Habits. The exemplary that I have it here, it's in Romanian. I will write in chat also the author and also the name of the book, just in case someone is really interested to work with themselves in the regard of this self-awareness point. Because in our day-to-day life, which also happens in the professional life, we have this tendency of relying on habits. And in order to avoid this thing to happen for our own life, but particularly for the professional life that we are choosing, which is nursing in our case, we need to look at what do I do as a habit that just comes to me, or and where do I need to work on myself in order to be able to incorporate new knowledge, new evidence-based clinical practice. Okay, and before ending my presentation, I hope to be able to show you just scrolling down. I hope you can see. Can you see now the Word document? Okay, now I just put it out there, the student guidelines for assignment on clinical reasoning. As was mentioning before by my colleagues, those materials are available in Dutch, in German, in Romanian, and in Finnish. And yes, we just have to give this to the students to explain them what they need to do. There is a session in itself that we need to talk to them about clinical reasoning and what do we expect from them when working with the given situations, and how do they end up with establishing a nursing diagnosis, with looking at the prognosis, with formulating the desired outcome, and looking back, evaluating, reflecting on what they have offered as alternatives for solutions for the situation that the patients are in, patients, families, etc. So just for me to show you. And also this is now the Excel document which presents the how to say, the evaluation how to say, format that the educator has it as a tool in order to objectively evaluate how the students have completed their booklets. So we have thought of everything, and for these two documents in particular, we need to appraise not only University of Transylvania and Hospice Casa Speranței, but majorly Ho West University. Yes, thank you. I will give the floor to Mina, which will give us more information on the website that we are constructing together, and hopefully will give more input on the different materials that we have created in order to be accessible to all of you. Mina?
Thank you very much, Nicoletta. And what's happening next? So you have to do just push a button, Joanne, so you get the text there. Yes, thank you very much. So we are now launching our intranet to our website. And the idea of the intranet is that it would be a place of networking for teachers. And we will put all our materials there before they are published in the website, because everything what we are doing will be published so that everybody has access for it. But if you want to hear or read or comment already the drafts, welcome to our intranet. And also we are welcoming you to the intranet because it would be so nice to have a place for our teachers from different parts of the world to discuss and also maybe find solution from each other to the questions we are thinking about. And then if you put the last one, and you can follow us in Twitter. So you will find us there, NursEduPal. And also we have our Innovation in Nurse Education Task Force group. And you can find this on the website of EAPC, and also the links from our own website to the task force. So we are trying to collect all the wisdom we have in different parts of the world together. And because we really think when we have been working already 1 year or more together, not 1 year, many years together, that when we are working together, we are much more than when we are working as individuals.